It was a nice day. Fresh, light, warm. A most harmless of days. Until I heard my mother scream so loud, it would have woken the devil. I found her standing in the garden in hysterics, pacing back and forth, looking in bushes and over fences. I grabbed her and tried to speak, but she just kept screaming. I gave her a slap and it actually worked. What happened? What's wrong? My mother's pale face replied, "Your sister. She's gone. I was just watching her play with the flowers, but when I blinked, a man was standing behind her. I blinked again, and she had vanished." The empty black hole feeling filled my stomach. It was impossible what she just described, but the look on her face and the shaking of her hands told the truth. Was there enough time to see what he looked like? She looked like she was going to throw up. I did, but you nor anyone would believe me. I know you're not mad. She's gone and you saw who took her. I will believe you, please. She grabbed my hand with hers and held tightly. He was very tall, so tall. He was looming over her. His hands were thin and long like twigs. He himself was thin, skeletal almost, but he wore a suit. A well-fitted black suit with a black tie. She burst into tears and buried her head into my shoulders. It's okay, we'll find her. Did you see his face? Any strong features which would make him stand out? I carried on holding her, feeling the tears soak through my jumper and shirt. She began to whisper something which I couldn't make out. I'll believe you no matter what. What did his face look like? She pulled back and looked right into my eyes. He had no face. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. It was blank. Pure. White. She began to cry again. I felt terrified. An unknown person with no face had just taken my little sister, her daughter. I brought my mother into the house and sat her down. I told her that I will call the police. I will deal with this. 911, what's your emergency? My little sister, she'd just been kidnapped. Please send the police over. He still might be walking around with her. We have a description of the man. Okay, what's your address and please give the description of the man. I gave my address and began to explain. He is tall, extremely tall, and deathly thin but in a black suit. And he is white. Not in race, but in pure white. And he has no face. I know it sounds insane, but this is what we'd seen, please. The man on the other end went silent. I thought I'd been cut off. We'll send someone out. They'll be there in about 5 minutes. And he hung up. 1 hour had went by. No one had turned up. My mother's friend had come around and was comforting her, but no police or investigators. This is effing stupid. I refuse to sit here. I'm going down to the police station myself. I can't sit by while she's out there. I ran out of the house, down the busy street, and all the way to the police station. The lady at the front desk gave me a funny look as I ran in panting. Are you all right, miss? No, my little sister was taken. And I called 911, and no one came. I called an hour ago. Where have you been? She looked shocked. We've had no calls about a kidnapping in the past hour, or day. I now felt sick. I will call one of our guys in, and you can talk to him. A brief moment later, I was in the room with 2 officers, answering questions about my sister, where I live, what my mother was doing, and what I was doing. I then gave the description once again, and once again I got a blank look with no voices. The idea of this man who took my sister was becoming more and more insane. He had no face? No face, I'd already told you. Tall, thin, black suit, white, faceless face. I'm not sure why I need to repeat myself. Can we go out and find him? They gave each other a horrified look. No, we can't. I'm sorry. We nor anyone can help you or your sister. Just hope he doesn't come back. I'd move if I was you. Now leave. Leave? A young child was kidnapped, and I had been told to get on with it. No, I won't leave. You'll help me find her. What are you scared of? Imagine how scared she is. She must be terrified. How will you be able to sleep knowing you won't help me? I can't do this alone, but I will if I must. If you're too much of a sissy. I got swiftly thrown out. I had only a description of this man and no help. The best I thought was to perhaps Google this, so I began to walk home. I only got down the street from the police station when a police car pulled up next to me. It was one of the officers I had just spoken to, no doubt asking for forgiveness so he could sleep happy tonight. I'm so sorry. If you get in the car, I'll explain more. I'll tell you what you need to know. I had no choice. I needed help, and here it was. I got in the car and he began to drive. You're not the first to describe this man. Children, adults, elderly have been taken by this man. There's no certain target for him. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, black or white, female or male, sane or insane. As long as you're alive, you're at risk. We have tried countless times to hunt him down, and anytime anyone gets close, they start going insane. Come to work sleepless and say that they saw him in their sleep, in their house, garden, even when they go food shopping. They either kill themselves or vanish. This is why we can't help anyone. If you start getting involved, he'll come after you. It'll start off small. Maybe you'll notice him in a crowd, but think nothing of it. And then it grows. We can't keep giving our good men and women to him. We would have no police left. I am warning you. If you try finding him, and your sister, he will get to you. He will change you. I know she's important, but your mother doesn't want 2 of her daughters gone. I was stunned and lost. If I try to find her, there's a big chance that I will go too, and leave my mother, but if you guys can't find him or stop him, maybe I can, and I will. My self-preservation is not important anymore. People are vanishing because of this man, and everyone has become selfish and keeping away. He knows he can do it. If I go insane but stop him, imagine how many people that can save and their loving families. The children who can experience life. This is not about my life or soul. I thank you for the warning, but it's not just about my sister, but everyone now. I'm afraid, but so were all the others. I will stop him. My heart was racing so fast I thought it was going to crack its way out of my chest. I gave the officer a strong look into his eyes through the rearview mirror. He sighed loudly and stopped outside my house. It's noble what you're doing, but don't act stupid or act like a hero because this is no time or place for a hero. Here. He pulled out from under the car seat a gun. You might need this. God knows if a gun can actually hurt him. I froze up from that quote. A gun? Might not hurt him? What am I dealing with? Then everything he had said, the description sunk in like a bullet. No face, a no-face man. Sorry, it just sunk in. Thanks. I will see if it does hurt him, or at least scare him off. He pointed to a little switch on the gun and flicked it. I presumed that this was the safety. I hid the gun in my trousers and got out of the car. You won't hear from me again. I can't get involved. Try not to go mad. And with that, he drove off. I felt empty inside, not knowing what to do now. I had no leads. I looked down at the ground and sighed, thinking of anything I could do, and the best thing I could think of was Google. I looked it up. This was my first sighting of him. He was across the road standing behind a car which had been washed. My head throbbed as I looked at him. I looked away and rubbed my eyes till I saw the multicolored stars. When my vision came back, he was gone. I knew the timer of my sanity had begun. For a couple of months I spent time researching this man, putting up questions on local forums, finding pictures, anything, any scraps. I would see him whenever I would leave the house and sometimes in my dreams, but it was manageable. My life was not being destroyed by him, yet. My mother was in therapy over my sister. It seemed to help. But every couple of days she would come in my room and give me a long hug. I couldn't imagine how tough this was for her. I never told her what I was doing. I didn't want him to come for her as well. As long as he was focused on me, I could work. Many forum replies said, "Stop. You're a monster for trying to get us involved. Leave the demon alone." However, I got one reply from a new user. He sent me an inbox message. "I know the man you're searching for. He took my father 5 years ago. I saw him once and never again. I have spent the years finding out what I can. He has appeared throughout history. There are many paintings showing him and poems talking about a faceless man. He hasn't always been in this area. He seemed to move from place to place, and even to different countries. Forests seem to be the #1 place he looms, but as the world progresses and the forests vanish, he's having to come out into the urban environment. Even his clothes change with the times, even though they give him no disguise. The only relation his targets have is that they're both human and alive. Not everyone he stalks is taken, but nearly all the stories you've heard of ghosts and ghouls will be related to him driving people mad. Staring at him causes intense headaches, but I have no clue as to why. There have been reports of people cutting holes into their heads to release the pressure caused by these headaches. People refusing to sleep. People refusing to wake. I have never read about a madness like this. Yet, it seems all he does is appear. There is no talking with him, or action. He just stands there, staring at you with no eyes. My father was a well-built man, not someone who could be taken down easily. Yet he vanished before my very eyes, while clutching his head and eyes. I couldn't run after him because the pain of looking stopped me in my tracks. You're dealing with something which is ungodly and unworldly. He will never be scared of you. As you draw closer, he will become more frightening. The best advice I can give is to not look at him for too long, to stay away from the local woods. Stay at home. Wait for him to leave you alone, because he will if you leave him alone. Your sister is gone. No one knows where the people are taken to. I can tell you a symbol which appears constantly around him. It's a circle with an X through it. If you are certain you want to hunt him, then search for that. I can't tell you any more. My searching has left me in a state and I'm being taken away tomorrow. I pray for your safety. The more I delved in, the more scared and confused I became. But now I had something. The local forest and a symbol. It's enough to start this. I kept dreaming of my little sister playing happily, and it happened every night. I saved the message and I reread it a few times. I didn't reply to it. There was no point saying I hope you get better. It was far too late. But perhaps where he was going is some form of safety. I had my start. That night, the faceless man appeared in my sleep. He was just standing at the end of a long hallway, not moving. He just looked at me. I awoke to an uneasy feeling, but I was able to function. Yet I knew this would not last. I waited a few days before I would investigate the woods so I could calm my head somewhat. It was half an hour's walk to the forest. I brought food, water, my phone with a map, as well as a pen and paper. I was good at sketching what I see fast, and I prefer it to a photo. It was midday when I entered the woods. The only thing I knew I was searching for was that symbol. I kept an eye open for it on the trees, the ground, or even a fence. I kept checking my phone to see how far in I was. For an hour I searched for anything, and came across nothing. If anything, it was just a pleasant walk in the forest. A calm, cool breeze blew across my face, taking the sun's hot rays away from me. Thinking this was enough for today, I chose to head back. It was enough searching for now. I was following the route my phone had made back when it started to flicker and buzz, changing the path. At one point it flashed that symbol I was looking for. I was starting to panic badly. I was aware of the empty woods around me, but they now felt filled with evil and eyes. I wanted to claw my eyes into the back of my head. My head began to hurt. I looked around for him, as this was a sure sign, but I couldn't see him anywhere. I walked a bit further away, guessing my way back, but the headache was more focused, and my phone more broken. I heard rustling from far away. I froze. I stared with my gaping eyes, waiting to be pounced on by him. To simply blink with my eyes and he'd be there, over me. The seconds stood still in a hell-torturous way. I couldn't breathe. A final rustle, and a dog ran out, straight towards me, jumping up and licking my face. I almost passed out from the relief. I looked at my phone and the map was back working fine, along with my head. My head felt like a window that had been opened, letting out all the hot air. A couple ran over saying sorry for their dog. I told them not to worry. It was a thankful surprise. I stumbled home and threw myself on my bed. I had very little energy, but I understood the madness now, which comes from this man. What it does. What it feels like. I underestimated it. I drifted off into a deep sleep. My dream this night was different. I was in the woods at night with nothing on me. The moon was bright enough to light the whole forest in a dim blue light. There was no breeze, no resulting of cold air. The forest was dead, silent. I tried walking forward, but I couldn't. My feet had roots wrapped around them. The more I pulled, the tighter and deeper they sunk into the ground. I looked up and he was right there, in front of me. My eyes met with his chest. I avoided his face, forcing my head to look down. He didn't move. He just stood in front of me like a statue. I could feel his lost eyes bearing down into my skull. It wasn't physically painful, but knowing that he was doing it that is what was hurting. It was teasing, abusive, but I kept looking down. I imagined there was a weight hanging from my chin, pulling my whole head down. I kept imagining it, but as I did, I could feel the weight on the back of my head, pulling it back. I focused on my weight, not the one he was putting on me. The harder I tried, the harder he tried. It became too much and my head swung up and I looked at him. I screamed from the pain. I awoke, but my eyes wouldn't open. They were forced shut. They were screwed up tight, like when you were a child and saw something terrible. After a while, my eyes loosened, but I did not in any sense feel safe. I barely opened my eyes and there he was, in my room. Not in the corner, but once again, over me. I could feel his hand on my head. I wanted to die and scream while doing it. I closed my eyes and the feeling on my head went away. My safe feeling came back and I knew he was gone. I opened my eyes fully and put the light on. It was 6 a.m. A cold dinner was on my desk. My eyes cried as if I'd stared into the sun. I clambered to my mirror and looked. My eyes were red completely. All the little blood vessels had blown. I could barely look as the light hurt. My eyes had to stay closed, so I felt my way around to my mother's room. I heard my mother on the way. "Dear, what happened? Are you okay?" "My eyes, Mom. Gah, my eyes. The blood vessels, they've all bursted. We need to get to the hospital." I opened my eyes slightly to look at her. She grabbed my arm and threw her warm coat over my head. "What on earth did you do? Look into the sun? Into a laser pen? You're dang lucky you're not blind." The doctor was not impressed, and when I said I woke up like it, he would not believe me. "Maybe you're drunk a lot and hurt yourself. I don't know, but the pain should go away by the end of the day. Your eyes are dry, which is why they hurt. Just keep them closed and enjoy the radio." He sounded like a jerk, but I did as he said. I was also prescribed some eye drops. I spent the day helpless, but not thinking about him. I was more scared about my red eyes. A couple of days later, I began recalling what happened and how I felt. The pure fear and loss of control. How he did nothing in my dream but look. Did he know that's all he needed? Was this a matter of wits? The control and power of a mind to appear in my room and in my dreams seemed extreme compared to before, where he would be in the distance, barely visible. Perhaps I was close to something in the woods, which I couldn't see. My gut was telling me that this was true. I was close and he acted extremely to keep me away. But why keep me away? Surely he would want me to find whatever it was, catch me. I realized that I had to go back. I had saved the route on the way back last time. I reached over to my eye drops as they began to sting. I read on the box, "Please read instructions." I had never seen "please" on the label before. Pulling out the little fold-up instructions, I saw that these weren't instructions. We didn't need them. He already told me how to use them. I opened it up and flattened it out a bit. Typed out on it was, "I have seen this a few times before. For all that is holy, keep away from the suited man. I don't want another cover-up. I can't take it anymore." This would explain why he was so hard on me. I screwed it up and threw it into the bin. I was already cursed and targeted by him. Stopping would not cure me, so I might as well keep going. I could see in the corner of my eye, him, standing at my window. I walked over but was looking away. I drew the curtains. I felt angry at what this thing had done, and I certainly wasn't going to give up yet. He was going to get harsher and more torturous to me, but I would get tougher. As I reminded myself when I felt crazy and depressed from this, it's not just for my sister, it's for everyone. A week later, I was back in the forest. He had been in every dream that week, staring at me, and I was tired from it, but I still came out. I was back at the location where he began to attack me last time. Nothing was happening. I was here at the same time with the same items. I must have been wrong. I wasn't close. But I wasn't going to let that dishearten me. I found something. I came close to something and I made him freak. So I pushed on. If I felt a headache, I knew I was getting closer than before. I felt more anger and determination, pushing forward and deeper into the forest. I was losing track of myself. I could only see finding what it was. I was hypnotized until, on the trees beside me, I saw the symbol. I almost walked straight by it. There carved in the tree was a circle with an X through it. I felt it with my hands. It seemed unreal almost. It was a rough carving, done quickly by the look of it. I carried on, guessing I was on the right track. I tried not to get too focused this time. I kept my mind open so I could see any more symbols, and I did. They became more frequent, almost on every tree until it was on every tree. I was surrounded by this symbol, carved at different heights and sizes. There was just a small area where no tree stood. I was in the middle and looked all around. I couldn't believe this sight. Hundreds of these symbols all focused in this area. I began to look around me. There must be something here, I said to myself, barely recognizing the headache which was forming. I was rubbing my hand on the ground when I whacked it on something. I moved what plants I could out of the way and saw a small handle. I went to grab it when my phone began to vibrate violently, and my head screamed. I had forgotten about being careful. I looked up, and before I could register seeing him, I was flung back and knocked out. The cold wind biting my nose and hands woke me. It was dark now, and I was alarmed. My phone was dead, and I wasn't sure of the way back. All of the symbols on the trees had gone. He was screwing with me, and doing it well. I fumbled on the ground, making sure the handle was real. Upon finding it, I found a few stones and placed them all around the handle, so I could find it another day. Then I ran back as I guesstimated my way home. I had no light, so trying to be as careful as I could afford to not trip over anything. But rocks and roots were the least of my problems. My head would randomly pound. It felt like my skull was being punched. I couldn't see him, but you didn't need to. I kept going best I could, but the urge to look behind me was growing stronger. I gave a quick glance behind and he was right behind me. I yelled from the pain in my head, but I kept looking back. I didn't know what to do. I looked back again, but as I ran, a tree got in front of him. The pain lightened, and I didn't want to look back. So, I kept him behind the tree for as long as I could. I would look forward and he would be there again, but I would do the same thing as before and get a blasted tree in front of him. A fair few times I did this till I tripped up. I landed flat on my face. I had lost my lead and my pattern to keep him away. I went to get up when I was lifted up. I squeezed my eyes shut. I knew he was lifting me up, yet my eyes began to open, and they opened to horror. It wasn't his arms lifting me, but tentacles. 8 of them. Each limb being held apart. And my eyes locked his lost eyes. I could feel anger from him. It was in the air. I'd gotten too close. How do I get out? How do you get away from something which has no fear, which knows he can get away with anything? Fear was his friend, if not himself. My mind turned into a blur as I kept trying to catch ideas. He was in my head, and pulling my limbs further apart, muscles pulling. It was more than desperate now. I grabbed one thought, pushed myself and used the only part of my body which wasn't being held, my head, and I headbutted him. It was the worst pain I'd ever experienced upon impact, yet I knew it wasn't the impact which hurt, but touching him which did it. But it worked! I was dropped. I didn't think he was expecting it. I almost threw up from the pain, but knew I had just bought some time. I got back up and limped through the forest. I looked back and he was far back, which a small smear of blood on his forehead was from me. I'd actually done something which shocked a being which had no feelings. I felt a small sense of achievement. I got you now, you jerk. I got you, I said to myself, knowing that I could do this and not get killed from it. I leaned in and pushed myself off the trees to get me off to the edge of the forest. I could see some lights from a car park. I wasn't sure where I'd end up, but anywhere was better than in here. I gave a last look back, but I couldn't see him. I threw myself into the tall car park lights and took in the deepest of breaths. I felt like I'd just come up with air after swimming from the bottom of the sea. There was a single car in the car park. I was going to knock, but I fell to my knees. I let out a quick scream and the fogged-up car doors opened, with a couple running out while putting clothes on. I quickly said sorry for ruining your time before, blacking out. Love, you're waking, yes! How are you feeling? The room was dimly lit. I was laying in my mother's bed with many pillows and blankets covering me. I feel like someone messed me up good. Excuse me? Sorry, so I'm guessing you know that I was found in a car park by the woods? Yes. The couple used your phone and called me, saying that they'd meet us at the hospital. But, well, the doctor wouldn't treat you. Said you brought this on yourself and it wasn't going to get involved. And the police brought you home. The couple stayed here a bit, even invited us to their wedding. The hospital gave us some supplies to fix you up with. Why would they treat you? What have you done? I can't tell you. Otherwise you'd get involved and I dare not get you involved. I'll just rest for now, okay? Okay, dear. But you know that you've been acting funny. It's not the going for more walks, it's how you're not eating, and I catch you talking to yourself. And you close all the curtains and blinds like something's looking in. You're not a bit mad, are you? Have you been doing drugs? No, Mother, and I'm sorry that I've been acting odd. I didn't even know I've been acting that way. I don't remember talking to myself, I just need rest. I think after the kidnapping, it just got to me. She gave me a deep, loving hug. I know, it's gotten to me too. We have to stay strong. Here, have a drink and go back to sleep. You'll be back up in no time. I kept getting night terrors. The situation in the woods kept repeating, each time making me feel worse. I would wake up to feeling sick and sometimes wetting the bed. I explained to my mother that it's the bump that I've got in my head causing the problems. It took a month to recover, but I would see him in the house, sometimes standing behind my mother, in the bath, as I was using the restroom, in my wardrobe when I opened it. Everywhere. He was not letting up one bit. I was exhausted from all of this. I was falling apart and losing myself. I was unsure if I wanted to go on, but I kept going on in my sister's room, which was being packed away slowly, and seeing her little face playing with the toys, and that would hurt more than anything. I would die trying to find at least something. I had to go back, one last time, and fight through everything he could give me. I packed my bag like before, and brought my phone even though there's a fair chance it would cut out when I got close. In my trousers was my gun the officer gave me. It might be useless, but I might also scare him. My door opened slowly and he was standing there. I stared right back at him, knowing that I might not be coming back from this, but I had no fear of death. He vanished before my eyes. I walked through my door and he was at the end of the hallway. I got close and he was then down the stairs. He was leading me back to the forest. He knew this would be a fight. I wasn't scared of following him though. My stomach gave a different story. I followed him to the woods where he vanished. I could hear my heart beating now. I turned to my phone and began to follow the path. I kept looking at my phone. It took me straight to where the trees with the symbols were. This time every tree was completely covered by the symbols. I shined my phone on the damp ground looking for the rocks I left. Nothing had been moved. I grabbed the handle trying to pull. It refused to pull up. I gave it a wiggle and the hatch slid open. I was staring into a dark hole. Every single fiber in me began to riot and protest about going down. I cried a little. I was scared. As I sobbed, I heard a little voice in the darkness, just faintly. I stopped sobbing to make sure it wasn't an echo. I couldn't make out what the sound was. It was just small and light. It was enough to bring me in. I reached the bottom of the ladder. It was dry and warm down here. I shined my phone in front of me only to see a hallway. It was slightly mucky down here with what looked like dried blood. It wasn't everywhere, but it was noticeable. I walked down the hallway trying to be as quiet as possible. I heard a little moan in the distance. It could have been him for all I know. I trusted nothing right now. A few steps more and a couple of lights flickered on. Some were white and some turned things red from blood on them. At the end of the hallway was a large room. It was split into different sections by sheets of metal. I heard them whimper a bit louder this time. I stepped into the large room. It stank and felt damp. My shoes made a light click noise. Is there anyone there? My goodness, the voice. It was her voice. The voice of all love and joy in the world to me. My sister. I thanked as many gods as I could think of for this and almost cried. Haley, yes, it's me, I'm here. Help me. She began to cry lightly. I followed the sound down on one of the splinterings to her. She was on the ground in the corner, barely keeping herself up, but her limbs looked pulled and lifeless. I grabbed her face with my hands. She was ice cold. I looked into her eyes, thanking the gods once more that she had them. He kept trying to pull me, to look thin like him, I think. I hurt. I want Mom. I want to go back home. Please, take me home. I held her tight. I looked back into her eyes and smiled. She should have been dead. Knowing what powers he had, though, he could no doubt keep people alive as long as he needed. I went to pick her up when she screamed. I turned around and he slammed into the far wall. He was very tall now, and his tentacles were flailing. I actually saw him walk through my haze. I pulled my gun out of my trousers and shot at him. He vanished. Haley was crying and I hobbled over to her. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna get you out. I picked her up and began to run away. I heard the moans of other people, even saw arms with distorted hands reach from the darkness. He appeared in front of us in the hallway when I shot again. I threw Haley over my shoulders and tied the ropes from my backpack around her waist and began to climb. The gun won't hurt him. I've seen others try. Here, this might work. As I climbed, Haley pulled a sharpened bone from under her top. "Hold on to it till we're at the top. You're sure it'll work?" "No, but I have a gut feeling it will. It is what I've been doing when he's been gone. I'm not sure what's special about it." "If you say it's special and your gut tells you it'll work, then I'll use it." I kept climbing. It was a lot longer up than down. I trusted my sister's judgment with this weapon. The person whose bone this was could have had a special illness, or maybe it was the fact that it was a bone from someone he had killed. I wasn't sure of much. I was rushing too much to think. The hatch was still open. I put Haley on the floor and made sure she was okay. She handed me the sharpened bone, which looked like a femur, and an elongated one at that. As I grabbed it, my hair was pulled back down the hatch. I didn't hit the floor hard. The hallway looked miles longer than before, with barely any lights. At the end was the suited man in all his power. My head pounded and my body screamed of 1,000 tortures. I could barely stand up. He flashed forward, again and again, coming closer and closer. I fell to one knee from the pain. My nerves were splitting. I thought I was dying. Again and again, he flashed forward down the impossibly long hallway. He was getting terribly close, and I could focus on the weapon in my hand, ready to hurt him when he was close enough. He shot right in front of me. Time slowed completely down. He was reaching out to grab me. I was standing up, moving the bone to strike. He saw with his lost eyes the weapon I held and began to turn away. I shoved it through his ribcage and out through the other shoulder. I screamed at him as I did it, letting all the pain fly out. I gave it a deep, long twist. If he had a mouth, I know he would be using it to scream. I held it there for a while till I pulled it out at an angle, grabbed his suit, pulled his chest towards me again, and shoved it in, again. He gave me one last look and I gave him one last scream. He touched my face before becoming limp. I stood there, holding his body on the bone. I tore it out of him. There was no blood on the bone. I looked down at him. He was disappearing into nothingness before my eyes. I had killed him. The impossible man. I called up to Haley, making sure she was okay. I climbed up and gave her my phone, telling her to call the police, saying that we found some kidnapped people, but not to mention the Faceless Man. The police took us to the hospital. I was right in the fact that all my sister's limbs were dislocated. Some of the other people down there died when they were moved, or as soon as they got to the hospital. It seemed his magic wasn't keeping them alive anymore. Some, however, did survive. The quick treatment kept them going, and life returned to them. The police officer who gave me the gun came to my sister's room. He stood at the door in amazement. I walked over to him and gave him the gun back. It scared him enough. Thanks. He grabbed me and began to cry. "You saved the love of my life. He was taken 6 months ago, and I never told him that I loved him. And I was killing myself every day knowing I couldn't go after him. And here he is. You saved him. I can't thank you enough." I began to cry with him. "Go and see him. Tell him. And stay with him." The officer pulled away from me, nodded, and walked into one of the other doors. A couple of weeks passed. Everyone was doing well in recovery. My mother had calmed down enough that she didn't give my sister 200 kisses and hugs when she saw her. The officer told me how thankful he was again, and that he was now in a relationship with the man I helped rescue. It all seemed sweet, but I didn't feel any better. I felt worse. Worse than before. I dreamt of nothing but blackness, and I had barely any thoughts. Haley would mention how I would just stare at her with no expression or life in me. I wasn't sure what was wrong. It wasn't stress. I wasn't sure until a night where I stayed at the hospital with my sister. I woke from a black dream and stood, but I stood tall. A few feet taller than my real height. I would hold out my arms to see that they were long and thin. My skin was pale and my clothes were tiny on me. I sat back down and got up again, and I was fine. The worst sickening feeling filled me, and I ran to the bathroom and threw up. It looked like blood, but I didn't feel any pain. I washed my face and looked into the mirror. I just looked ill. Something unknown was happening to me. It kept happening. A couple more weeks passed. The situation became dire when I sat in the hospital room with my sister, mother, and nurse. I was looking out the window at the sunshine. My name was called, and when I turned around, they all screamed. They just looked at me in horror. "Where did your face go?" My throat tightened up. It's back now, but it vanished. What's happening? You look like the man who took... What have you done? I ran down the hall to where the officer's boyfriend was. They were both in there. "Can I please talk to you? Now." He came rushing out. "Sheesh, you don't look so good. What's wrong?" I'm turning into him." "What?" "Yes, you heard it. My face had just disappeared in front of my mother, my sister, and the nurse. Sometimes when I stand up, I stand at least 7 feet. You gotta help me. Throw me in jail, in confinement forever, please." He looked down at his feet, shaking his head, rubbing his eyes. Okay. I know what we can do." When we kept getting reports of kidnappings from the Faceless Man, an organization contacted us. Said if we ever captured him or something of his, we were to contact them. Secure, Contain, and Protect. SCP, they are called. They deal in all strange things like this. I'll call them. Just wait with your family. He gave me a pitied look, which I deserved. I walked back to my sister and mother. I looked at them in shame for what was happening. My mother came over and hugged me. My sister, who now walked, hugged me too. We held each other for an endless time. A couple hours passed when the officers walked in with a few large men in suits and a man in a lab suit. The lab suit read SCP, to Secure, Contain, and Protect. My ride was here. I explained everything to them, everything which happened while he took notes. Then he just looked at me with a broken look. "It's time for you to come with us. For yours, but mostly everyone else's safety. Say goodbye to everyone. You won't need anything. We will arrange it all." I turned to my family. I had worked hard and pushed far to get Haley back, and I got her, and more. Mother was more than happy that she was home. Haley started to sob. I held her hand. "I know this is going to suck, and it's not okay, but I have to go. Be angry at me if you must, but please, don't let this stop you from living your life." I told myself I'd do anything to get you back, and this is what had happened. Cry for a while, but not forever. You can have everything in my room, even the things I told you not to play with. You can have those. "But I don't want you to go." "I don't want to either, but I have to. You saw what was going on. You saw what was wrong with me. I don't want to hurt anyone. You'll grow up to be a wonderful woman. When you're older, maybe write about what had happened. I'll always love you." I grabbed her and kissed her forehead tightly. She nodded as I kissed her, understanding what was happening. I turned to my mother. She only had small tears rolling down her cheeks. She gave me a light hug. "You don't need to explain any of it. You need to go. I understand. I'll always remember you for who you really are. You'll always be alive to me. Be safe." I replied saying that I loved her and walked over to the SCP men and left. It's been 1 year since it all happened. It's nice here. I have my own room for now. I go to therapists to help me through this and anything I ask for. I help out on maintaining computers and even cleaning out other SCP cages, as they won't attack me. The changes are becoming stronger though. I've been seen fully changed, standing in the hallway with no face, tall and thin. They're getting my containment ready for when I change and don't come back. I enjoy myself while I still can. It's hard knowing what you're turning into. I've been told this is fascinating. It explains how the Faceless Man has lasted so many centuries. I'm just next in queue. But they have given me a nickname which I think it fits. Slender. They call me Slender.